Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek Interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Pallavi Tyagi, and she worked as an engineer in the automotive industry before transitioning to marketing. She's also host of the Your Digital Marketing Journey podcast. I'm curious to find out more about her life as an engineer, the motivation to become a marketer, and her podcast. Welcome to Teach the Geek Interviews. Welcome to Teach the Geek Interviews, Pallavi.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm about to call you by your last day. I was like, I don't know if we're friendly like that. So, I did mention, well, I actually didn't mention, but from the bit of research I did on you, I saw that you got your undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. So what was the motivation to get that degree?
Well, I sort of drifted into mechanical engineering, to be honest. I did want to become an engineer, but I wanted to become a computer engineer because that's the subject that I understood. And somehow I just didn't get through to that. But when I went into mechanical, I'm a positive person. So I looked on the bright side and I thought that at least being in mechanical, I can look at things, I can look at the problems, work with something tangible. So that's how I went into mechanical, and I had a great time. 4 years of studying lots of different subjects. Was never a very good student, but at least I enjoyed what I studied.
A few months ago, I interviewed a woman from Greece, and she says in that country, at least, you have to take this exam before you go to school. And this exam actually determines what you're even allowed to study. So based on the test or based on the grade that you get on that test, that determines whether you can study computer engineering or mechanical engineering. And I remember thinking that's so crazy. Is it like that in India too, or you just decided computer wasn't for you and mechanical was going to be it?
No, that's exactly how it is in India, and that's why I didn't get through to computers.
Oh man, this again? Yo, I remember hearing that when she was telling me. I was just like, this is the craziest shit I've ever heard in my life. What do you mean? This test determines your whole life? I was like, man, it's like, you need to get out, man. That's crazy. Okay, well, sorry, man. But luckily it worked out for you, so.
Yeah, it did work out. So like I said, look on the bright side. At least I've got into engineering. I wanted to become an engineer, so I got that.
Yeah, you got engineers. Yeah, engineers and whatever you got. So yeah, absolutely, you're a glass half full person. So that's a good way to look at things. So I also noticed from the research I did on you that you also got a master's in automotive engineering. Was that something you were able to pick, or did you actually have to do a test to be able to do that too?
No, so the only test in that was to determine which college I went to. No, I picked automotive engineering, and I specifically wanted to go to Germany because, it is the place for automotive. So yeah, I got to pick that. I got to pick the college. And especially when you're studying in Germany, it's important to pick a course that is in English if you're not very good with German. So I was able to do that. So I went there.
Nice. So what was it like? What was the kind of the transition from going from India to moving to Germany? Was there a lot of culture shock?
I think as a student, the culture shock is lesser because all students across the world are short of money, short of resources, and are kind of just scraping through life. So I don't think the culture shock was that much, but definitely moving abroad and living with other people of different countries and kind of understanding how lots of people function together. I think that was a great experience, and I'm thankful that I actually lived abroad as a student, and then I also lived abroad when I was adult and I had more money. So I'm grateful for both the experiences.
Yeah, I experienced something similar. When I was in graduate school, I had a Turkish roommate, Attila.
Mm.
He's watching. What's up? But when I remember, so apparently I didn't. Well, I found this out later, but there has been, I guess, historical tension between Greece and Turkey. And so I remember one day I was talking about baklava, and I always thought it's a dessert. And I always thought it was a Greek dessert. And I remember mentioning this to him, and he got very upset. I was like, no, it's Turkish. I was like, they stole it from us. I was like, all right, man, I ain't trying to start no problems, but but it was interesting to learn, to live with people from different cultures, different countries, and just learn about those different cultures and countries too. So anyone watching,
That's
hey,
so true.
not exactly sure what baklava is. It either it's Turkish or Greek, but whatever it is, it's delicious. So, so I mentioned that you worked as an engineer for a while, but then you decided to go into marketing. So maybe you could talk a bit about the work that you did as an engineer, and then the reason that you decided to move into marketing instead.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I worked as an engineer for about 10 years, I think, and across different countries. I started with an internship in Germany, then worked for a couple of years in India, and then moved to Australia. And that was really my longest stint. Um, so I guess as all engineers, you start at the bottom. So when I was working in India, we were working for clients in Germany, and we were literally the third tier three supplier. So a lot of the work that we did was very small scale. When I moved to Ford in Australia, because we were the topmost, like we were making the car, the work that I did was a lot more managerial. So a lot of like I had a bird's eye view of the project. I knew which car I was working on when it was being released, and I had a specific job in that particular car. So through the life cycle of that car for about 2.5 years, that's what I was working on. And then working with different teams, working with the safety team, or working with the business team, or working at different countries, thinking about where that car is going to launch. So that kind of really helped to look at automotive from a much bigger perspective, and not just essentially what my role is, and kind of understand how a car rolls out. So that was about, like I said, about 8 years at Ford Australia. And I think around that time, I kind of started feeling that I was a little bit pigeonholed into the job that I was doing. So automotive is a very restrictive, not very restrictive, but it is quite a regimented industry. So there are very set standards, very set processes. There's very little chance of making a mistake if you're following the checklist, and you know exactly what to do once you follow the process and once you follow the checklist. So from that perspective, I felt that I don't have enough knowledge about what's happening in the world today, especially from the technology point of view, and in sense of the general business point of view. So around 2015 is when I actually launched my own startup. And if anybody has worked in a startup, you know that irrespective of what your title is, you're actually doing everything. You're literally doing everything. So that was that experience where I was still at Ford, but I was still able to take out time and work on my startup. And somehow during that startup is where I developed an interest in marketing, because I had to market my startup, and I had to understand how to sell my product to someone, how to kind of look at the benefits, and decide what is this pitch that I'm going to do, so that somebody buys my product. So that's how I kind of moved into marketing. And once we moved back to India, I was lucky to get a job in marketing and actually implement it at a university. And the university was new, and they had new courses, so they had to market the courses in a very different manner. So that's how I've transitioned from automotive into marketing. And I mean, now I'm a full-time marketer.
Wow. Okay. So what was the startup that you had started while you were at Ford?
So my startup was called Neeb Magazine, which is a Hindi word, and it means foundation. And actually, it was an online magazine for children. So my vision was to create to create an online magazine for children where they could read fiction in both English and Hindi, which is the national language of India. So and we also had audio support. So we were actually like the probably one of the first to think about that, if children don't if they're not literate in a particular language, which a lot of children are not literate in Hindi, or Indians living abroad are not necessarily, they cannot read Hindi. So we included audio so that they could actually listen to the stories. And this was before Audible came into India. So I'm proud to say that we did something which was a little bit revolutionary at that point in time.
Nice. So is Neve still around?
No, so it isn't around. So funnily enough, the name was foundational. So it set the foundation for a lot of people, including my own career. But unfortunately, the startup itself did not survive.
Oh, okay. Would you it is I don't know if are you doing any kind of startup work now? And if not, is that something you would ever do again?
So what I'm doing now actually is also a startup. So I'm consulting different startups. I'm consulting solopreneurs and entrepreneurs who don't have digital marketing support. So yes, I am in the startup space. But what I'm doing now is actually the knowledge that I have gained from my own startup and the challenges that I faced during that time. I'm now helping others overcome that challenge in a more efficient and budget friendly manner. So like I said, it's the foundation of a lot of things.
Nice. I mean, I did mention also that you have a podcast, your digital marketing journey podcast. What was the motivation for starting the podcast, and what do you hope people get out of it?
So when I started my consultancy, which was in April, it had nothing to do with the pandemic really. It was just that I quit my job, and that's when I started my startup. And coincidentally, that's when pandemic hit. I had the option of blogging, and that's how you build your brand awareness. But I also wanted to try a new medium because part of the motivation of doing what I'm doing is also to learn. So I want to experiment with different marketing tactics so that I know what works and how it works, and then how I can implement it to someone else. So I had been listening to a lot of marketing podcasts, over the last couple of years, and I had been reading their blogs. And I thought that that was something that was missing at that point in time in the Indian context. So that's what I wanted to start. And just because of the pandemic, really, podcasting in India actually took off. So we didn't have a very large population of people who were listening to podcasts in India. But since April, there's been like a 42% growth over month on month. So people are listening to podcasts, and they now understand how they can get information from that. So when I started seeing the spike of how my podcast was performing, that's when I thought, okay, let me focus on this full time. Not full time in the sense that I spend all my time on it, but I believe that that is a big brand awareness channel for me. So as of now, I'm still continuing to use it, as a brand awareness channel. I'm not looking to monetize it. I don't have ads on it. In fact, my podcast itself is very short. It's only under 6 minutes, but I feel that at least that is a medium that people will discover me, will have confidence in my capability, and it's also a way to make a connection with my audience.
Nice. I know you'd mentioned that the podcast is currently for brand awareness and that you're not monetizing it at this point. At what point do you think that monetization would make sense for you?
I'm not sure yet that I would ever consider monetization, because for me, the podcast is itself a brand awareness tool to get more business. So I don't think that I would ever be able to run ads for somebody else, and that's a primary way of monetizing. But I think the thing that I can get out of it is eventually, if I have my own course or if I have a workshop, then that's something that I can look at. So it wouldn't be direct monetization of the podcast itself, but yes, I would get business out of it. That's what I'm looking at perhaps in a year or so.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I tuned into your podcast. I really enjoyed it. I like the fact that it's short, so it gives you it gives you good information in a short amount of time. I really enjoyed that. There's so many
Thank
podcasts out there that go, they're really long. Then so you have to listen to them, and you're kind of waiting and hoping that you get something out of it after the hour long, podcast. But with yours, it's if you can't get anything out of 6 minutes, then I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's short and sweet. I really enjoyed that. So
Thank you. Thank you.
your startup back when you were working, and then now you work as a startup now, or you're self-employed now. Was it always your idea to become self-employed?
No, no. I would say that when I was working at Ford, I never really thought about being self-employed because nobody in my family is self-employed. Nobody has a business. Everybody is from service background, or is has worked at a company. So I never thought I would be self-employed. But it was just at that particular stage of my life. It was quite close to midlife crisis, so perhaps that's really what it was. But yeah, so yeah, at that age, I think, and just from the experience that I had gained, I felt that I was in a little bit of a rut, and I wanted to try something different. So I don't think the motivation really was self-employment. And for me right now, also, the motivation is not necessarily self-employment. It is actually learning new things, and that's really the motivation of doing what I'm doing right now.
Okay. And the work that you do with solopreneurs in terms of helping them with their marketing, are you focused on certain industries or are you industry agnostic?
No, I'm industry agnostic, and that helps with the learning. So, like, I'm working with somebody in the hardcore engineering space. I'm working with somebody who's in the health space and who's working as a children's publisher, and everybody has different requirements. And I think that's the thing that I enjoy the most. That even though I'm doing literally the same thing for all of them, but I have to think differently because everybody has a different audience and everybody has a different budget.
Nice. And then when it comes to marketing, at least I used to work in medical devices, and when it came to the marketers, I never really was sure. Hopefully, you don't take offense to this. I wasn't sure what they did. So when it comes to the work that you do, is it difficult to convince people that this is money that you should be putting toward your marketing? Because it's kind of difficult when it comes to marketing to know, I guess, get that return on investment. If I put this money in, then I'm going to get this. But with the marketing, at least when I understand, you put this money in, you may get something, you may get nothing. But how do you convince the people that you're working with that this is money that should be that they should spend on marketing?
Yeah, I think you've captured it very well when you say that first that you never understood what a marketer does, and second is how do you see the I mean I know it sounds like but that's the truth, really. That's the truth. So from my own experience, like I said, when I was with the startup, even though I was looking at marketing, I was just never able to find somebody who would explain to me what they were doing. So part of the reason why I have a podcast, part of the reason why I'm part of different entrepreneur networks is because I help people really understand. And the second thing is I do sit down with them and get their expectations right. So they may have a plan. They may want to do a Facebook ad and they may think that they will get X dollars, X rupees of sales with that. But it doesn't work like that, right? There's a whole process behind it. There's a lot of things that you need to do. So when I sit with the client, I always expect that they have a clear goal, that what their expectation is, and then I discuss the goal with them. And most of the time, what happens is that whatever it is that they want to do, they have to just tell me what solution they want. If they start telling me that this is how I want you to do it, I have to explain it to them much further that it may not happen that I'll get the same result because this is not how marketing works.
Yes. Well, thank you for pointing out my ignorance and not knowing
Oh.
what marketing is. You didn't have to agree with me that quickly. Yeah, man. I didn't know. But so I find it so interesting whenever engineers go into marketing, because engineering, as you mentioned, even in your own job, it was so precise. You follow the checklist, and that was basically it. Not basically, but that was a lot of the job. But with marketing, there's so much that's up in the air. There's so many variables. There's so much unknowns. Was that difficult for you to make that transition from something that was so precise to something pretty much imprecise?
Yes, I'm not sure if looked at it from that perspective to start off with, but definitely when I'm working on anything related to marketing, I am trying to kind of processize it as much as I can, create a process out of it, and be sure that at least I'm able to replicate it to get the same result. And that result may not be measurable, but at least I know that okay, in the ballpark, I know that by doing these things, something performs better or something performs worse. So I don't think I've found a formula for it, but yes, as an engineer, I am looking at being able to kind of measure something whatever way I can.
Nice. So another question that I recently started asking all the female engineers that I speak to now, because now I'm really interested in it. Because I've spoken to, at least on this podcast, I've spoken to a number of female engineers. And then after that, I've done some reading and just some research on my own because I'm just curious about the subject. Have you ever heard of the term the leaky pipeline?
Leaky pipeline.
Yeah. So
No.
essentially what it is, yeah, okay, well, so what it is essentially is the phenomenon of women leaving engineering more so than men. So even though the at least around the world we've become a lot better, at least historically, at encouraging more women to go into engineering and science, just into the into the STEM fields, into technology, they leave these fields at a higher rate than men do, and people are trying to figure out why. And at least from what I've read and seen, the main reason, at least that I can tell, is that the environment in engineering isn't welcoming to women, and so after a while they leave because of that. And they leave, and go into something else. So I'm just curious. I know you said that you were interested in marketing even based on you starting your startup, but did you leave? Was there anything that could have happened for you to have stayed in engineering, or did you leave? I guess did you leave disgruntled just in the industry in general, or were you going to leave anyway because you wanted to do something else?
No, I never thought of I never thought of that, that I was a woman in a man's field, and I don't think I was ever made to feel that way either. So personally, for me, no, that was not the reason why I left engineering. For me, the reason was that I was doing something over and over again, and I needed a change. Maybe that's also the reason why some women leave, because maybe men are. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's just that it's not challenging enough after a while for a woman. Maybe they need more variety. I don't know. But definitely for me, it was not the reason why I left.
Oh wow, that could be the reason. Pallavi, the men don't mind doing the work over and over again. The women need to be more mentally stimulated, so they got to leave and do something else. That's what you're saying.
Maybe you could run a poll to see how many women agree with that.
As I mentioned, I've been asking this question quite a bit now because I'm curious. And at least from the ones that I've asked so far, unless they're lying to me, most of them have said they've left because they just prefer to do something else. It wasn't because wherever they were working, they were unhappy there. But I have a pretty small sample size, so I'm gonna keep asking that question to see what the answer is whenever I have the opportunity to speak to female engineers like yourself. So when it comes to the public speaking in general, do you have topics that you like to speak on? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, so the only topics that I speak on are the topics that I have personally experienced myself. So if you ask me to talk about automotive, you ask me to talk about entrepreneurship, marketing, these are the topics that I'm comfortable speaking about. And also the aspects of these topics that I would have experienced myself. So you probably know this already from talking to a lot of people, but any kind of public speaking for an engineer or for anybody in a very core technical field comes very late in life, because you're not in the public eye from a very early age, unless you yourself are someone who likes to stand up in a room full of people and talk. So that's why I'm still building my public speaking skills. So I'm only comfortable talking about the topics that I have experienced myself.
Well, I don't think that's odd. That's the way it should be. Most people should talk about things they know about. And actually you kind of get exposed when you speak about things that you don't know about, especially if there are people in the audience that actually do know that your topic really well. They'll they'll
Absolutely.
they'll definitely expose you when it comes to the Q&A part. And you're standing up there like a deer in headlights trying to figure out the answer. You know you don't know the answer. So basically, yeah, you're right. Stick to what you know. I'm a firm believer in that as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to to public speaking, also, is this something you've always been good at? And if not, what'd you do to get better at it?
No, definitely, I've not been good at it. My hobbies as a child were reading and staying indoors. So definitely not good at leave aside public speaking. I think definitely not even good at socializing. And in fact, I want to tell you this particular story. So when I started public speaking for the very first time, when I was presenting something at Ford, I had been there already for 2-3 years, and I moved into a role which involved me presenting to very senior people, and I was in a quality role. And even though there was a very clear set presentation, it had very clear slides. I knew what I had to say on them. I still had to write down my script the first time. And when I say I'm writing down the script, I'm literally writing, "Good morning, everyone. My name is Pallavi. I'm so and so, and I'm going to talk about this particular topic." So I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget what I was going to say. That was the first time I did it. But obviously, as I did it over and over again, I didn't have to write down, "Good morning, everyone. My name is Pallavi." I got better at it. Now, at least I'm at that particular stage where if I've created a presentation myself, or if I've created whatever, the public speeches, like the podcast or anything, if I just write down bullet points and I think about it through once, I'm good to talk. But if I'm recording something, like if I'm recording a YouTube video, and even though I have the bullet points in mind, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I try and keep getting it right. So I do kind of rephrase what I have said before and then see which one works better. But as of now, I think the bullet point thing, I'm there right now.
All right. Well, that's good. You know, your story sounds kind of similar to mine. So when I worked in medical devices, I also had to give presentations in front of senior management monthly, and it also was pretty standardized in the slides. I mean, I never wrote down "Good morning," but I, I certainly did those first few presentations. I did terribly because I I wasn't very good at conveying the information in the way that these people in the audience could take in. So I
Mm,
oftentimes would get questions that were what I thought I'd answered in the presentation, but because I didn't put it in a way that they could understand that I was getting these questions again. That's really what was the catalyst for me to get better at public speaking. I didn't want to keep wasting my time or just looking like a fool every time I had to give these presentations in front of these people because, you know, the CEO and the COO, like big time people were in the audience. And I wanted to, you know, make myself look good. And at least with those first presentations, I definitely did not do that. But but I got better over time for sure. You touched on this a bit, but perhaps you can go a bit more into it. Do you have a process for putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
so I think the process is definitely I find out how much time I have because that determines what I'm going to say. But other than that, I do create my slides from the start so that I know what I'm going to be talking about, and I still put the script in the notes, but I have bullet points on my slides. So I guess the only thing that I really do, or the only process that I have, is I know how much time I have, and I start creating, the slides based on that. Before that, I do go through it once in my head so that I know what I'm going to be saying. But I don't actually do a dry run in the sense of recording it and all. I think I'm fairly comfortable with the topics that I'm talking about. I'm fairly comfortable now that I can do it. If it's a new topic, then definitely a lot more work goes into it. I do a lot more research so that I have some solid figures that I can talk about, and it's not just full of fluff. It needs to have data behind everything that I'm saying. So yeah, I do that.
Well, yeah, data is certainly important for those technical presentations. And when I first started giving presentations, I didn't think about the importance of storytelling when it comes to even technical presentations, because if it's too data heavy, people won't pay attention, especially those who are not in that field. And it's
Yeah.
really important to kind of draw them in with stories. So that's something I definitely had to learn as I got better at public speaking. And I really commend you for taking into account timing. I have a friend who makes fun of me that I take timing into account too. So if I know if I have 15 minutes, I'm not going to take 20 minutes to give the presentation. I'm going to take maybe 14 to have that
Yeah.
1 minute buffer. So I'm definitely not going to go over time, especially when you're giving presentations at conferences. If you go over time, then that throws off the entire agenda, and
Yeah.
then I don't get to go eat lunch when I'm supposed to go eat lunch because everything is not happening on time. Now I'm hungry and sitting in the audience. I'm mad at the person that's presenting, even though maybe it's not his fault or her fault because she had to start, or he or she had to start later because somebody else went over time. Yeah, I'm so kudos to you for even thinking about timing when putting your presentations together.
Thanks.
And then another thing I wanted to ask about is nerves. Do you ever get nervous when you give or before you give presentations? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Yeah, I do get nervous. I don't get nervous to the point where it's visible. Uh, and I don't think I do anything about it. I think the level of nerves depends on the topic that I'm talking about. And because I'm talking about topics that I've, already experienced, my nervousness is definitely lesser. I do take, like, I do try and center myself before the presentation. I don't meet anyone. I spend about 15 minutes just by myself in the room or wherever it is that I'm giving a presentation, and I don't look at anybody else. But I just go through my slides one more time so that there are no surprises when I'm presenting. But over time, because I have been speaking a lot, and I am kind of in that mind space where I know that I'm going to be speaking in front of people. When I get up on stage or when I'm actually presenting, I'm not that nervous because then I'm in the flow of what I'm talking. So it works out fine that way.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to nerves, I'm a big believer that if you're not at least a little nervous before you give presentations, it's because you don't care about that presentation. I mean, it's a and if I truly believe that if you actually care about what the people are in the audience are getting out of your message, then you might be nervous about being able to deliver what they expect or what you hope they get. When it comes to also public speaking, you gave some really great tips. I was writing them down. Keeping track of time when it comes to preparing your speeches is really important, and then centering yourself. I thought it was a really good tip. Before you actually get up there, and then also speaking on what you know. I mean, that seems rather obvious, but it's an excellent tip. Don't try to go outside of your comfort zone and talk about things you know. At least do quite a bit of research before getting up there and talking about something perhaps that you didn't know all that much about beforehand. Can you offer any other tips that could help people in becoming more effective at public speaking?
Yeah, so one I've learned from my own experience, and I think a lot of people who come from a technical background will face this. In fact, I believe it's a drawback, is that we are too precise. So, like you mentioned, that when you gave your first presentation, you thought you had already answered the question that the audience was asking, and I think that's something that technical people believe, because we are so precise that when we are talking, we are so direct, we are so to the point that we just don't build a story, we get straight to the point. And when you're talking to people who are even a little bit different from you in terms of their background, or they don't understand the subject, I think it is very important to kind of just build, get to the punch line, but get there at the end, like don't start from it. So I think consciously over the years, and I'm still not great at it, I'm still not a great storyteller, but consciously over the years, by putting pointers in my slides where I have to pause for a joke, or I have to pause for an example, or kind of explain myself, I do that a lot, because otherwise my presentation would be over in 5 minutes and nobody would understand anything, and they'd be like, okay, I didn't understand anything from what she said, I don't care how great she was, but I didn't understand anything. So I think storytelling is something that technical people really need to focus on, unless you had it naturally.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in storytelling now too. It wasn't always that way, but it certainly is that way now. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention about things you're working on, Pallavi?
No, not at the moment. I think we covered a lot of things today.
All right, wonderful. How can people get in touch with you?
All right. So I think the best way would be to find me on Instagram. So I'm at Pallavi 26 Tech, which is also part of what I do. I do deliver a lot of knowledge and a lot of snackable marketing tips. That's the best way. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn. Again, Pallavi Tyagi. People can find me there.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek Interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Consider checking out Teach the Geek to Speak. It's an online public speaking course, and you can find out more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Pallavi.
Thanks, Neil.